Hello. So we are in the home stretch. Everyone got their coffee, so hopefully you can make it through. 2 more presentations. I run product for Contentsquare, and Contentsquare is a digital analytics company, and it is a non-AI native company, which I imagine most of you work at still, right? And what I'm going to talk about today is implementing customer-facing agentic experiences for products that were not originally built that way. A few things before I dive in. The first thing is, I'm going to blur the lines a little bit between AI chat and true AI agents. I imagine most of you in the audience know the difference between an AI chat, AI agent, but just in case, so I set a baseline. The difference is these AI agents are able to operate autonomously. They can do complex logic. They can come up with like a plan of action and then execute against it. So they can do much harder things than a typical AI chat, but from the point of view of the experience of the user, they're kind of similar. The second thing before I start is I have an admission to make. I feel wholly unqualified to do this talk. And I know that's a weird thing to say to people who are deciding whether to pay attention to the next 20 minutes, but it's not to say that I have no qualifications to do this talk. At Contentsquare, we've built our own AI chat capability. We've built a lot of AI capabilities into the product. We just launched an AI agent called our AI Analyst. I've also been involved in Contentsquare is acquiring a company called Loris, and Loris actually analyzes conversations, AI agentic conversations in the support use case. So I have qualifications. However, I feel like we're so early in this process and in this journey that what we do know is completely dwarfed by what we don't know. But that being said, I still thought it would be useful to share what we have learned, and hopefully we can all help each other on this journey that we're on, which is an amazing journey. Okay, so now I'm going to do the why do we even care about this part of the talk. I'm not sure it's even needed, so I'm going to keep it brief, but experiences are getting more and more conversational. This is one example stat from Gartner, but we've all experienced how generative AI advances are changing how we search, do research, write, and even shop. The traffic from AI chat is growing exponentially, so this is just one metric from Walmart referrals, but you see in just 1 month it grew over 10%. It's 1 month. And so what does this all mean? Well, what's at risk here for brands, so like B2C companies, is losing the relationship with their customers. So yes, AI chatbots could just be another channel like TikTok to get more revenue from, but if you think back to when Amazon launched, Amazon forced companies to pay attention to things like load times and forced companies to offer smooth checkout experiences and easy search and recommendations. And so if you think about, for instance, someone going to a chat interface today and saying, plan my Disney trip. Well, if Disney doesn't offer experiences like that, that may cause disintermediation between them and their customers. And for B2B companies, just as Amazon impacted the experience that other similar companies had to offer, that consumer expectation of how things work bleeds into B2B software too. And so if new users are not getting the easy chat interfaces and easy ways to get value and adopt products, then that's also not going to work for B2B companies. So those interfaces have to adopt too. All right, so with that, I will dive into the learnings that myself and the team had, both from implementing our own chat and agent experience, in our product, and also from Loris's work with customers implementing agentic support experiences. Okay, the first thing, learning, is to focus on problems and not solutions. I know I'm talking to a room full of product professionals, and this is like product management 101. But I thought it was worth talking about because I think that right now the pressure to invest in AI is really extreme, and it's become very hard to resist that pressure and push back and make sure that you're building things that are of value to customers. So maybe I'll actually ask for a show of hands, like who feels like they're currently now under significant pressure to just invest in AI and AIify their product. It's very hard for me to see the audience, but I see a lot of hands. So my recommendation here is resist. So focus, if you can, on driving alignment around the problems you want to solve and the outcomes instead of just diving in, because we all know it doesn't work. Now, here's a method that we used at Contentsquare. At a high level, what we did was we thought about the biggest problems we wanted to solve for either our customers or our company. And then separately, we thought about what LLMs are good at. Things like summarization or data interpretation and explanation. That's really key for an analytics tool. Or like language transformation or knowledge retrieval. And in fact, if you don't know well what an AI chatbot is good at, believe me, ask them and they will be happy to tell you. So then you have these two lists, and then you find the intersection. And I'll show an example of us doing this at Contentsquare. So Contentsquare was traditionally more of a white glove enterprise product. And so that meant that the onboarding journey was not self-service, and we wanted to make it a lot more self-service. In fact, we wanted to automate the whole thing. So we looked at the typical journeys. We kind of built like a golden path to value, and we estimated the level of effort that customers or the company was putting in at each of these steps. And then we thought about how LLMs could be applied to this problem. And in many cases, it turned out they could help a lot. So we applied them where it made sense, and we were able to transform this journey significantly. We're still on the path to do more, but the first, like that second, third, and fourth step there were ones where we applied LLM technology, and we were able to reduce the time it took from like hours to either minutes or seconds, and reduce the effort from a lot of effort to like just, you know, a chat prompt. Super easy. So LLMs do make a meaningful difference, and they really do work, but you have to apply it to where it's going to provide value. Okay, so now that we've talked about defining the problem, let's talk about execution. It's really important to, if this is key, and it should be, I think, important for everyone to invest here, to make a deliberate investment. So not to half-ass it, not to like just do it in the margins. And so how do you organize this investment? Well, one thing that we did was we made sure that when we built teams, these teams had product and design in them. This seems to sound very self-serving, but I have been at multiple companies where there was a decision to have a data science team go off and figure out how to like invest in AI and build features, and it failed miserably. And it's a very rare data science person or engineer who also knows how to do discovery really well, has enough of the context about customers and their needs, and so it makes sense why this doesn't work. So really important to have like a typical PM and designer associated with this. Now, the second thing to do is to think about the things that you're planning to invest in and whether they're relatively understood and validated, or whether you're very early, you don't even know if technically they're going to work and what you're going to do. So you may want to have a mix of what I call prototype teams. These are teams that are like maybe a PM, a designer, and maybe one or two engineers to just really quickly throw stuff together and validate whether it's possible, and see if there's interest, versus like full feature teams, which everyone knows what those look like. Okay, the other thing that we did when we staffed this group is we staffed it with both new hires and volunteers from existing teams. We didn't take every single volunteer, we vetted the volunteers, but where it made sense, we did that. And this was really helpful because a couple reasons. One is there's always this risk of creating this A team, B team situation. So we wanted to avoid that as much as possible. And so that helped with that. The second thing is that these AI teams are working on top of the existing product, right? So it's not separate, like they have to leverage the capabilities that are already there in the product. And so they need to have connections to other teams, and so that helped with that as well. And then they also need to have knowledge of the code base, also helped there too. The last thing that we did, which was very deliberate, is we did not actually call this the AI team, we called it the AI accelerator. And the reason why we did that is because we did not want this to be the team that utilized AI. We want the whole company to utilize AI. But the purpose of this team is to be on the bleeding edge. They're the ones that are going to try out the new stuff, see how it works, see how it applies, and build prototypes and get us moving on things that really take like a lot of expertise in this area. But one of their other goals was to enable all the other teams to be able to leverage the technology that they've vetted. And in fact, this has worked really well. So in our last release, we had 2 teams that were not part of the AI accelerator launch AI features, which was fantastic. Now, this is perfect. It wasn't without friction. We had moments where the AI accelerator team was trying to deliver something and they needed other teams in the organization to do things that they didn't know, and it was last minute and there was, mess, but it's worked pretty well. Okay, now that's the people side of the investment, how to set up the organization. I want to talk a bit about the cost side of the investment. And I will say, like, this ended up not being a huge factor for us. And that's because of the chart that you're looking at, which is that the cost of ChatGPT has been going down so much that when, if you're building something and you're on the edge of it being like affordable, you can pretty much assume that the costs are going to continue to go down and you're in good shape. So that part actually ended up being a lot easier than we thought it was going to be. Okay, so now that you've set up the team, what can you do to help them move fast? So there are 2 other things that we did that helped in this regard. One was having a bootstrap data set. So a bootstrap data set is one that uses real data like as a start, but then creates other data sets from it, either from like resampling or generating some new data, so that you have like a bunch of different but similar data sets that you can use to help train the LLMs. And the second thing that we did, and this is like most development projects, but think about things very iteratively. So have like interim milestones and be iterative with rolling things out. So I'll talk about 2 examples of this playing out. So the first one is Contentsquare. When we built our AI, it's called Sense Chat, but it's basically a chat bot that answers analytics questions. So you don't have to fill out a query. You can just say, yeah, I want to know like what this metric looked like over time, and it'll just do it for you. And one thing the team did that I thought was really smart was to think not about MVP, minimum viable product, but to think about minimum viable prototype. So what that means is, what's the minimum capability that is enough to put a working prototype using real data in front of a customer? So this was get in front of a customer with something they can really understand the value of as fast as possible. And this really helped us accelerate so that we were able to, from beginning to end, launch this capability to all of our customers by week 20. So it was really fast. The other thing we did was a staged rollout. So, we started with a couple beta customers, then we moved to like a percentage of our customer base, and then we raised that percentage over time. Make sure scalability and everything was working. Okay, so here's another example of this iterative process, and this one is from one of Loris's customers. So again, a customer, Calendly, that was using AI agents to do the support experience. So that was their goal, right, is to offload some of that workload. And so they also did this gradually. So they started by using Loris to figure out, like, what are the call drivers, right? So let's first figure that out. And then let's figure out, for those different call drivers, let's build our Bootstrap data set. Let's see which of the calls answered that question well. So they were good examples of responding to something, and which ones were not good examples, so that they could create that data set and then train the LLM. And then once you train the LLM, then you have an agent that can start to take on workloads from customer support teams. So very gradual process. Okay, the fourth thing that I'm going to talk about is transparency and trust. I have worked at a lot of companies at this point that have used AI to deliver capabilities, and this is from before LLMs were being used en masse like they are now. There's been AI for a long time. There's been data science capabilities for a long time, the ability to make recommendations. And the one thing that I've seen over and over again is that you cannot have black boxes. Users do not like black boxes. If you're making recommendations, you need to tell them why you made that recommendation and how you got there. And frankly, there's no reason not to, because after all, generating text is something LLMs are particularly good at. In fact, if I was going to ascribe any emotion to an LLM, I would almost say they are happy to tell you why they are doing what they're doing and how awesome they are. So here's an example of our newly launched AI analyst. So this is an agentic AI that can execute against a very general question. So your general question could be something like, how do I improve my conversion rate on my website? And so what it's able to do is to think about what are all the analyses it needs to run, and then autonomously run all those analyses, and then synthesize all the data, and from that then make recommendations. So it basically can do things in minutes what would take a user like hours of time to do. But the first thing that it does, and you can see this in the screenshot here, is it tells the user exactly what its plan is. Because if you don't do that, and you just go directly to the recommendations, which is possible, not showing your work, no one trusts it. Okay, another issue that you may run into when you're building these AI capabilities into your product, especially if it's a B2B product, is that some companies are very sensitive to using AI features. Some are like gung-ho. I was talking to a company last night. They're like, if it says AI, we want to use it. We've got all these initiatives. We're going all in. But then other companies are like, no, like we got privacy issues, like we have policies, we don't want to use it. So you have to get consent, but there's an easy way to get consent. It's not to ask a customer to like sign a new contract. It's just to put a simple click through in your product so that you can just click and go. And this worked pretty well for us. So far we've had 78% of our customers just accept this click through. And so eventually, we need to get more than that, but it was a pretty high percentage. So we were happy with that. Okay, so the last learning I'm going to talk about is learning. Just like any other capability you launch, you need to be able to measure how well it works. And we're still very early, so there's not a lot of specific tools to do this. So what we did when we were working on our own product is we watched session replays. So when the traffic was still low, we just literally watched how users were interacting with the AI analyst. We do this like every week. We'd build it into the sprint ceremonies. We also worked in feedback options like thumbs up, thumbs down. We reviewed all the thumbs downs, so you could see what was going on there. And we also reviewed all the no answer responses. The other thing we did is built a test framework for evaluating answer accuracy. So this is another use of that bootstrap data set that I was talking about. This is really important because this technology is changing so fast. And so if you don't have this, it means like there's a new version of the product, like GPT-4 comes out and you can't leverage it. And so having this was really helpful because what it meant is when GPT-4 came out, within 3 hours of it being made available, we were pretty sure it was better than the 3 dot whatever version we were on. We actually ran an experiment with live customers within 24 hours, and we had a full rollout of the new version in a week. Now, I talked a bit about these learning and improving techniques. The second one, pretty scalable. The first one, like watching session replays, like looking at all the thumbs down, it's not all that scalable when you get to a large group of users. So you have to think about chat analytics. And this is an emerging capability. So I talked a bit about Loris, a company that we're acquiring. And Loris does chat analytics, but they do it for, right now at least, like the support use case, right? They're analyzing conversations. These conversations could be voice conversations with humans, chat conversations with humans, or chat conversations with AI agents. So it's still a bit early. These tools don't really exist yet for these use cases that we're talking about, but I think they will, and it's going to be important to look at them so that you can do this at scale and you can understand the sentiment of the users that are interacting with your chat experience. So essentially, you need the right AI to evaluate the AI, which is pretty much going to be the future. AI is going to be talking AI and everything. Okay, so to summarize, basically, make sure you focus on problems and not solutions. Resist the urge and the pressure that is out there for everyone right now to just go and invest in AI and just take a little bit of time to define the problem you're trying to solve. Make sure that you make a deliberate investment, so don't do it in the margins. Prioritize agility. Make sure that you build the tool, you build transparency into what you're doing. And this is easy to do because that's the way, that's something LLMs are very good at. And then lastly, you have to keep iterating it. Things are changing very quickly. And so you have to build a system that is easy to continue to iterate on. All right, so with that, I thank everyone for listening. Hopefully we can all figure out how to live in this new, very exciting world together and continue to implement AI capabilities into the products. And then if you have interest in seeing like what we did at Contentsquare, come by the booth or talking about this more, I will be there after the talk. All right, thank you.